I'm 52 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the kind of woman who didn't rock the boat. Married young, raised 2 daughters, stayed faithful to my husband through every season, sunshine storms, and all the in-betweens. I believed in the comfort of routines, in the quiet dignity of decency. I loved the life I built, even as it slowly shrank, losing its spark, becoming something smaller, quieter, more expected. To me, love wasn't a wildfire. It was a fireplace, steady, predictable, safe. Until one day, it wasn't. Something happened not long ago. Something I still can't find the right words for. It wasn't premeditated. It wasn't meant to turn my world upside down. And yet it did. It left me questioning everything who I am, what I believed about myself, and the role I thought I'd always play. I never imagined anything like this could happen to someone like me. Please, if you can, don't make the same mistake I did. It started on a Tuesday. The kind of Tuesday no one writes songs about gray skies, slow hours a day that felt more like an echo than a moment. My car had broken down for the 3rd time that month. And Marcus, my husband, was buried in back-to-back meetings. So when his coworker Jordan offered me a ride home from the grocery store, I didn't think twice. Jordan wasn't a stranger. I'd seen him at office parties and fundraisers, always standing a polite distance away. He was maybe in his late 30s, younger than Marcus, with a calm, grounded way of talking. He had that old-school kind of politeness, the kind that made you feel seen without being watched. I'd never really given him much thought, but I had noticed over the years how he lingered just a moment longer than most. Not in a way that made me uncomfortable, just there. We exchanged small talk as we stood in the parking lot. He loaded my bags into the trunk of his silver sedan, which surprised me with how tidy it was. "Are you sure this isn't out of your way?" I asked as I slid into the passenger seat. "Not at all," he replied with a warm smile. "I live 10 minutes past your place. Besides, it's a good excuse to escape the office." His voice had a kind of softness that made me feel oddly safe. A rare thing, especially these days. With Marcus, everything had become transactional. Bills, errands, maintenance calls. I didn't blame him. That's just what 30 years of marriage becomes, right? A kind of business partnership with history. As we pulled out of the lot, the clouds split briefly, and sunlight spilled onto the dashboard in gold streaks. Jordan glanced at me, hand relaxed on the steering wheel. "You seem quiet," he said. I offered a half smile. "Just one of those days, I guess." "You know how it is." He nodded without pushing. But somehow, the car felt full, like his presence filled up the space without needing to say much. He didn't flirt. He didn't pry. He just listened. We chatted about the usual traffic weekend weather, a new cafe that had opened on Main. I laughed more than I thought I would, especially when he shared a ridiculous story about Marcus trying to fix the office coffee machine and flooding half the break room. "He never mentioned that part," I said, wiping a tear of laughter. "He probably blamed the intern." Jordan grinned. I laughed again, but then the moment softened. The city noise faded behind us as we entered the quiet, tree-lined streets of Maple Lane. The late afternoon sun turned everything, gold rooftops, driveways, lawns. Then we reached a stoplight, and suddenly, everything stilled. There was nothing dramatic. No music swell, no slow motion moment. Just the two of us, idling at a red light in the middle of suburbia. But something shifted. The air changed. The silence deepened. Jordan turned slightly, meeting my eyes, not boldly, just directly. "Can I ask you something, Helen?" he said. I nodded, unsure why my heartbeat was suddenly so loud. "Do you ever wonder if you're still seen?" That question hit like a whisper in a locked room. "Seen," I echoed. He nodded gently. "Yeah, not just as someone's wife or someone's mom, just as you." I turned away, looked out the window at the blurred lines of picket fences and porch swings. My voice cracked just slightly. "All the time," I said. The light turned green, but we didn't move. He waited a second, gave me space. I didn't take it. Couldn't, and then he pressed his foot gently to the gas. We drove in silence for the next few blocks, but everything inside me was screaming. To everyone listening, have you ever had a moment like that? One question that cracked something open inside you. If you've ever felt unseen, type 1 in the comments. Let's see each other here. The ride continued in silence, but it wasn't the kind of silence that needed to be filled. It was the kind that breathes between two people, soft, delicate, and strangely comforting. I sat there with my hands folded neatly over my purse, eyes pretending to admire the blooming lilacs and perfectly trimmed hedges lining the quiet street. But inside, I was somewhere else entirely. Jordan's question still echoed in my mind. Do you ever wonder if you're still seen? It didn't feel like flirtation. Or maybe it did. I wasn't even sure anymore. All I knew was that for the first time in years, someone had looked at me and didn't just see Marcus's wife, or the woman who organizes the church bake sale, or the neighbor who always shows up early with a casserole and a polite smile. He saw me. He turned onto my street, and I stole a glance at Jordan's face. He was calm, focused. No smirk, no innuendo, no attempt to turn the moment into something it wasn't. Just present, attentive in a way I hadn't felt in so long. "Thanks for the ride," I said quietly as his car pulled into my driveway. He didn't put it in park, just idled. "Helen," he said, voice steady but gentle. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable." "I hope I didn't." "You didn't," I answered, too quickly, maybe too eagerly. "It's just, no one's asked me something like that in a long time." He turned and looked at me, really looked. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I fidgeted with the strap of my bag, with the edge of my coat, anything to keep my hands busy, to keep my eyes from drowning in his. "I've seen the way you move through the world," he said quietly. "There's something in you that's still very alive. But I get the feeling you've been told to keep it tucked away." My cheeks flushed, not out of shame, but out of a startled recognition. He had spoken something out loud that I'd barely admitted to myself. That maybe I was still here, still whole, still me. I didn't know how to respond, so I reached for the door handle. But before I could open it, his voice stopped me again. "If it's all right, could I walk you to the porch?" Logic tried to take the wheel, That part of me that keeps a calendar and schedules dentist appointments and picks up my husband's cholesterol medication. She screamed, "No," loud and reasonable. But the quieter voice, the one that still dreams, whispered, "Yes." I nodded, "Sure." We walked the short garden path up to the porch. The light above the door flickered, and I made a mental note to ask Marcus to fix it. Though I already knew I'd end up doing it myself. Again, as I dug in my bag for the keys, the silence stretched between us. Not tense, not uncomfortable, just delicate. "I'm sorry if I crossed a line earlier," Jordan said softly, standing one step behind me. "You didn't," I replied, turning around. "It's just hard to know what to do with a moment like that." He nodded. His hands were in his coat pockets. I think sometimes moments like that happen just to remind us we're still alive, still capable of feeling things. There it was again. That truthfulness, that steady honesty that didn't demand a response but somehow made you want to give one anyway. "Thank you," I said, my voice a little rough around the edges. He held my gaze for one more breath, then smiled, soft and genuine. "Have a good evening, Helen." "You too, Jordan." He turned and walked back to his car. I stood there, key in hand, front door unopened, and for a long moment, I just stood still, like something invisible had shifted beneath my feet. When I finally stepped inside, the house was dim. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, leftover from my afternoon routine. I set my purse down on the counter and just stood there, motionless in the kitchen, listening to the stillness. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No grand revelations, no kisses stolen, no lines officially crossed. And yet, something had changed. I felt it in the tightness behind my ribs, in the tremble hiding in my fingertips. Jordan had seen me, and now I couldn't unsee myself. The days that followed didn't look different from the outside. I still folded laundry, still packed Marcus's lunch, still waved politely to the neighbor walking his golden retriever. But something was shifting. When I passed by a mirror, I lingered. When I poured my coffee, I heard Jordan's voice echo. "Do you ever wonder if you're still seen?" That question didn't haunt me like a ghost. It hovered more like a memory I hadn't meant to forget. Marcus didn't notice a thing. He rarely did anymore. We had drifted into that part of marriage where silence was no longer awkward, it was just normal. He'd ask if I paid the water bill. I'd remind him to take the trash to the curb. We slept side by side, back to back. Conversations reduced to logistics. Affection traded in habit. I didn't hate him. I didn't even blame him. But somewhere along the way, I had begun to disappear. First in whispers, then in chunks, then all at once. And then 2 days later, I got a message from Jordan. "I hope this doesn't cross any lines. I'm headed out for coffee in a bit. If you'd like to join, no pressure." I stared at my phone. I could have ignored it. Maybe I should have, but I didn't. Me where? We met at a small cafe tucked between an old tailor shop and a flower market on the corner of 5th and Lawson. It wasn't trendy. No chalkboard menus or neon signs, just ivy-covered brick-steamed windows and mismatched mugs. I got there early, chose a booth near the back. Something about that corner made me feel both hidden and seen. When Jordan walked in, he looked surprised to see me already there. But then again, I was surprised at myself too. He slid into the booth and gave a quiet, almost grateful smile. "Thank you for coming." I almost didn't. I admitted, stirring a coffee I hadn't sweetened. I know. Silence came again, but not heavy, not cold. Just thoughtful. "I've been thinking about what you said," I finally said. "About being seen." He leaned forward slightly, listening with his whole posture. I didn't realize how much I missed it. Not attention, just someone noticing, seeing me, not the roles I play. He nodded. We give so much to others. Sometimes we forget to check in on ourselves. It's easy to get lost. "I think I got lost a while ago," I said softly. We sat in that truth for a while. No rush, no awkwardness, just presence. And then Jordan said something that unraveled me. "I don't want to complicate your life, Helen. That's not why I reached out. I enjoy talking to you. That's all. It wasn't a move. It wasn't a trap. It was kindness offered with open hands." We talked for nearly an hour. About nothing and yet everything. His childhood summers in Maine, my mother's peach pie recipe, the songs we play when we can't sleep. I told him I used to dance in the kitchen barefoot and breathless when my daughters were little and the house was asleep. He smiled, like that was the most beautiful thing he'd heard all week. When we finally stood, we hesitated. That now familiar pause stretched between us. A veil of something unspoken. He opened the door for me. As I stepped outside into the pale sunlight, he said, "Helen, if you ever need to talk, or just breathe differently for a while, I'm here." I held his gaze a heartbeat too long. "Thank you." We walked away in opposite directions. No touch, no promises. Just something gently understood. That night, lying in bed beside Marcus, his back turned, his breathing steady, I felt a ripple of awareness. Not guilt, not regret. Just something waking up inside me. A week passed. I didn't see Jordan. He didn't text. I didn't reach out either. Not because I didn't want to, but because I needed to know if this was really about him or about me. I moved through my days like a woman carrying an invisible question in her pocket. Who had I become? Who was I still allowed to be? One evening, while Marcus went upstairs to catch the weather report, I stayed in the kitchen. I wiped the already clean counter again and again, searching for something I hadn't named yet. The window reflected me back, older, softer, but still here. I thought about the version of me that existed before all of this, before the habits hardened, before the silence settled in. The woman who danced barefoot on tile, who read Rumi at midnight, who sang lullabies with her eyes closed. She hadn't died. She had just gone quiet. And somehow, one question from a man I barely knew had cracked the shell around her. That night I told Marcus I needed to talk. We sat at the dining room table, just like we did when we were young and broke and dreaming about a future neither of us could imagine. And I looked at him, really looked at him, the man I built a life with. If you've ever found a piece of yourself buried under routine or heard a voice inside say, "You're still here," leave a 2 in the comments. Let's unpack this together. I looked at Marcus, the father of my children, the man I had once stayed up all night dreaming beside. And I said the words, I hadn't known how to say until now. I've been feeling invisible. He blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? I mean, I don't think you really see me anymore, I said. Then I paused. And I don't think I've let you. He leaned back in his chair, folded his arms in that familiar way. Where is this coming from? I searched for the truth, not a rehearsed version, not something neat. It's coming from somewhere inside me. I said slowly, somewhere that's been quiet for a very long time. I didn't tell him about Jordan, not because I was hiding anything, but because this moment wasn't about another man. It was about me, the woman I had buried under years of practicality and politeness. The woman I used to be and the woman I still wanted to find again. Marcus looked down and rubbed his jaw the way he always did when he was unsure. I guess I just thought we were comfortable. We are, I said. But I want more than comfortable. I let that settle. Let it echo in the space between us. I want to feel alive again. For a long time, neither of us said anything. But for the first time in what felt like years, we were really there together, not as roommates or co-workers or parents, but as people. Eventually he asked, "What do you need from me?" "I don't know yet," I whispered. "But I need to start finding out." The next morning I got up early. No makeup, no plan. Just me, the sidewalk, the breeze, and time. I walked for blocks, letting the air fill my lungs in a way that felt unfamiliar and full. And then, as if by instinct, I found myself outside that small coffee shop on 5th and Lawson. I hadn't meant to come. My feet just brought me there. I stood outside, watching people pass by, carrying lattes, babies, backpacks, bad moods. And for a moment, I just breathed. Then I walked inside. Jordan wasn't there. And surprisingly, I was okay with that. I ordered my coffee and chose a seat by the window. Sunlight poured through the glass and warmed the back of my hand. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out a notebook I hadn't touched in years. Its pages were blank, empty, but it didn't feel like a void. It felt like a beginning. Not the beginning of something reckless, not forbidden, but something necessary. I didn't need a savior. I didn't need to be swept off my feet. I just needed to remember that I was still here, that I was still worth seeing. And as I sat there, sipping coffee and pressing my pen to paper for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I realized something else too. I had already started seeing myself again, and that was enough. If this story touched something inside you, if you've ever been lost in the rhythm of life and dared to search for yourself again, leave I in the comments. Your voice matters here. Thank you for joining me for this heartfelt story on love and tears. And remember, no matter how quiet it gets, you are still here. Until next time.